An alarming number of easy money seeking home buyers are getting burned by buying new construction in BC, but not in the way that you might be assuming. They think they found the ultimate hack: buy from a developer, let the market increase in value, sell the unit before the project completes, and then pocket the profits. But the truth is, this type of speculative play to profit on pre-sales, called an assignment, is complicated, risky, and often totally misunderstood, even when it's being guided by professionals. This video is going to walk you through how assignments really work, why developers make the rules, how taxes can crush your margins, and why you need to be very careful before ever getting involved. If you're a buyer, seller, or investor thinking about jumping into this market, you're gonna wanna watch this video all the way through, because it could save you from making a very expensive mistake that has burned so many people in its wake in the past few years. You only get one chance to buy or sell your next home. Let's get it right. Worth mentioning, my name is Darren, and since 2007, I've helped hundreds and hundreds of people buy and sell in and around the Lower Mainland, including many who found us right here on this very YouTube channel. If you're thinking about making a move or buying an assignment sale or a pre-sale, you can book a call anytime using the link below. Whether you're exploring options or you're ready to go, my team and I would love to help you. All right, with that being said, let's get into it. So let's start with the basics. What even is an assignment? An assignment is when the original buyer of a pre-sale contract sells their right to buy that property to someone else. They're not selling the actual home itself here. They're selling the right to eventually own it. Here's how it works. A buyer, or more often, a speculator, purchases the right to buy a property from the developer, usually a pre-sale condo or a townhome. Now, the project may not complete for 4 or even 5 years down the road. They put down a deposit of anywhere between 5% to 20%, depending on what the developer is looking for, and then they wait. And the idea here is that by the time construction finishes, the market will have gone up and their contract will be worth more money. Or better said, the unit that they promised to buy will be worth more in terms of market value. Before completion, they assign the contract that they had with the developer to someone else, a new buyer who is called the assignee. That person takes over all of the obligations in the original contract, including the price and the terms. The original buyer here hopes to profit without ever needing to close on the property, never get a mortgage, or pay the full closing costs. If the market moves in their favor, they pocket the difference, all of the increases. So do people actually assign properties for reasons other than just making money? Well, of course they do. You know, sellers assign for many reasons. They need out of the deal. They want to take the profits without waiting for the closing. Or maybe life changes, things like divorce, finances, job relocation. Buyers take on assignments for different reasons. Maybe they want to skip the long wait list, or they want to get access to sold out inventory. They could also want to get into a unique or unavailable unit at the time. Or they're maybe trying to buy under the current market value and kind of doing the same thing that the first buyer did, hoping the market will continue to grow in value over time. Assignments typically happen closer to completion, when the risk feels lower and the opportunity feels more tangible, but that doesn't mean that the risk is gone. And this isn't always a one-time swap. Assignments can change hands multiple times before a project completes. You might end up being the 3rd, 4th, or even 5th person to hold that contract. And each time it changes hands, complexity goes up. It only takes one missed document, unsigned amendment, or a careless seller to leave you with a legal and financial mess left to clean up. So what makes this risky and why should people care? Well, this is where it gets real. New construction in British Columbia is governed by something called REDMA, which stands for the Real Estate Development Marketing Act. It sounds official, but here's the key point here. It wasn't necessarily written up to protect home buyers. It was designed to help developers market projects, and it hasn't really kept pace with today's market risks. When you buy into a new development, especially through an assignment, you're stepping into a contract written entirely by the developer's lawyers. These contracts are often dozens or even hundreds of pages long. In fact, I just finished one before recording this video that was 245 pages in length. They're often non-negotiable, ultra complicated and full of developer friendly clauses. They give the developer major leeway to do things like shrink square footage, alter layouts, downgrade finishings or appliances, cancel amenities that were promised, delay the completion back, sometimes in the case of years. And in some cases, they can also pass rising construction costs onto you, the buyer. In Ontario, buyers have been hit with bills of $100,000 to $175,000 on closing due to cost overruns that are built into these contracts in the benefit of the developer. This is fine print that those buyers probably didn't even catch, because who would sign that? And what can they do about it? Well, pretty much nothing. You either pay the bill or you walk away from your deposit and risk getting sued by the developer. There's also tax consequences that you might not be expecting. The tax side of assignments can gut your profit if you're not careful. Here's what you could be facing. You're typically going to pay things like GST on the assigned amount, not the original price that was agreed to originally with the first buyer and the developer. There's also property transfer tax, depending on the actual end purchaser of the unit and really what's going on at the time and what the kind of plan is for the property. There's flipping taxes. The BC flipping tax, which came into effect in January of 2025, is a 20% tax on profits if the property is flipped in under a year. And that number declines down to zero by the end of year 2. There's also the federal anti-flipping rule, which has been active since January of 2023, where any profit that is realized within 365 days is 100% business income, no capital gains exemption, no principal residence exemption. So the bottom line, this is not tax advice, but you must get tax advice. And know this, that the Canada Revenue Agency is watching these assignments very, very closely. There are some major risks as well to doing an assignment that most people really take for granted. And I'm going to give you the top 3 because there's tons that we could go into this video. But the most devastating ones, well, number 1 is missing documents. Contracts that change hands repeatedly often have untracked amendments or lost addendums or disclosure gaps. You basically inherit whatever mistakes came before you in the process. The second is real financing risk. You're buying today, but you're not qualifying for a mortgage until years later. This means no rate hold and no lender guarantee. If the market shifts or your situation changes, you're on your own. And that brings us into number 3, market risk and appraisal gaps. If prices drop, as they did from 2022 to 2025 for a lot of the pre-sale units that were sold, and the unit doesn't appraise, meaning a third party doesn't come in telling the bank it's okay to lend the full amount that was promised from the buyer to the developer on the property, because if that borrower defaulted, the bank simply just couldn't get their money back. That means the unit won't appraise, therefore the lenders won't cover the full amount. That leaves you, the buyer, to come up with the difference or walk away from your deposit. So these clearly are not for everybody, but assignments can work for certain people. They could be for experienced investors, or maybe cash buyers, or people working with a specialist that specializes in assignments. But we oftentimes don't suggest they're for people like first-time buyers or anyone with tight financing. Or what about those who haven't done their due diligence? These are not typical resale contracts. Assignment deals are complex and often packed with legal landmines. That's why it's so critical that you get the right advice when you're considering buying an assignment or even a pre-sale for that matter. Many people will not only typically employ a lawyer to help look at the contract, but they also involve a real estate professional who has handled them in the past. Here's where things get a little bit sticky for my industry. Most real estate professionals have never handled an assignment contract before in their entire careers. And honestly, this isn't the time to let someone cut their teeth on a contract for you. You want someone who's negotiated dozens of assignment contracts, someone who's worked directly with developers' lawyers, someone who understands REDMA and the risks, and someone who can explain every clause to you in plain English. The contracts are dense, the timelines are unforgiving, and the stakes are crazy high. Here's the thing. Assignments can be profitable, but they're rarely simple. If you're thinking about buying or selling an assignment in BC, book a time to speak with us. And me and my team, we've handled dozens and dozens of assignments and can help you avoid the mistakes. And if you learned something in today's video, wait until you see the one coming up next, where we're gonna dive deep into why for years we have recommended to our clients to stay completely away from purchasing new construction. This video is really gonna blow your mind because you're probably not even aware of what you're really signing up for when you buy directly from a developer. If you're curious about how all that works and what the landmines are with that video is coming up right now, so I'll see you over there. Surrey, BC presales are in huge trouble. You see, back in 2021, the real estate market was absolutely booming. Call it the COVID rebound, but you could do no wrong in real estate. You had high demand, ultra low mortgage rates, and escalating prices, a perfect environment to buy a home at the time. But then all of a sudden one day, boom.